Our state has some incredible problems. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker. I'm here to talk about that with you and talk about the trends that have shaped this state and dragged us in one direction or another. We're not really we're not realizing the dream we had way back in the early 2000s or even around 2008 or 9 or 10. My name is Lynn Hinderrocker. Welcome to WOWBIZ Nebraska. We're going to get it on right now. Thanks for joining me here on WOWBIZ Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinderrocker, and I have a very special guest today. You know, we live in the state of Nebraska, of course, and we've defined in large part by the agricultural roots and the heritage of this particular state. That's why it's so, what a privilege it is for me to introduce to you the Executive Director of the Farmers Union here in Nebraska, Mr. John Hanson. John, thanks for joining me right here. Yeah,
good to be with you.
A lot of people here that are very pleased to hear your perspective on the situation we have here in this state and the agricultural sector in general. You know, so tell me, I mean, I think we've all heard that it's not the greatest situation, but I don't think we know the particulars. So why don't you share a couple statistics with me that help me understand where we're at today as opposed to maybe 3, 5, 10 years ago?
Well, the USDA statistics would say that we have half of the net farm income today that we did 5 years ago. That's a pretty radical reduction in the amount of earned income that you have.
Wow.
So we are in about the middle of year 5 of below the cost of production commodity prices. So we have been struggling to try to pay our bills and stay current and meet cash flows and keep our families whole and our bankers happy. And so the last 4.5 years, we've lost a lot of cash. We've lost a lot of equity. Even if you're a stronger producer, we've lost a lot of equity. And so rural communities are struggling, and all the ag suppliers that sell farmers and ranchers things, they're struggling. So when ag does well, we do well as a state and rural communities, and when we're not, we don't.
Yeah. Now, we're going to ask you why that is in a second, but I want to just go back and reiterate some of the clear things that you just shared with us, because it's not a little deal. You're saying that we're not even meeting the cost of production. Is that right? The money that we're able to attract to pay for our commodities and so on. So how are the people that are independent producers out there, how are they getting by? I have to ask this question. How do they live, or are they leaving the profession?
Really, off-farm income is the key. And so if folks have spouses that work off the farm, that's the amount of money that it takes to kind of feed the family and keep things whole. And if folks owe too much money, and they don't have an off-farm job, they're probably in trouble.
Yeah.
So to give you an idea of that I use in my operation is that I sold all of my corn when I started farming in 1973. That's a while ago.
Yeah.
For $3.30 a bushel.
$3.30.
And
okay.
The bid at my local elevator most of this year has been around $3.20 a bushel. And
that's not how it's supposed to be 30 years later, is it?
No. And so the easy question is, well, how do you pay for 2018 family living and farm operating costs with 1973 income? And the answer is, it's really difficult.
Not easily, no. And the cost of doing business also is creeping up as well, all right? I mean, not only are they not getting what they need to offset the cost of production and make a profit, but the cost of doing business is going up as well.
It's about, when I look at an irrigated corn and what it takes to put that crop in the ground and what you need to get back in order to make ends meet.
Yeah.
When I started, you had to really go to get $200 an acre in a corn crop, and now irrigated would run about $800. So it's about 4 times.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So what role do you play, and what role does the Farmers Union are they supposed to assume in the context? Do you lobby, or do you try to provide counsel at an individual community level? I mean, what can you do about this?
Well, I'm the president of the second largest general farm organization. So general farm means that we represent big, medium, small producers who produce all different kinds of crops and commodities and livestock in all different kinds of ways, from one end of the state to the other. And so we represent family farmers and ranchers at the state level, at the federal level. We provide different kinds of programs and services to them. And we're also fortunate enough to be a part of a founding member and part of a unique thing in Nebraska, which is the Rural Response Hotline. And that Rural Response Hotline is the longest continuously serving farm crisis hotline in America. And it's a great collaborative Nebraska Nice project between the church community and the farm community. It's administered by Interchurch Ministries, and we contract with Nebraska Legal Aid. And so whether you need food assistance, mental health counseling, financial, bookkeeping, all of those different kinds of services are available by calling that hotline.
That's a major deal. Do you staff it internally right there inside of your offices?
The office is in Walt Hill, and so it is staffed by Nebraska Legal Aid. We have folks that have been in that office for many, many years.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the real talent and the value of having experienced help is these are all people who have farms themselves.
So they can empathize.
They can empathize, you bet, and they also know how to ask questions. And so a lot of times the starter question is, well, I got this letter from the bank.
Oh.
That's the start, and
that's
so
the catalyst.
That is what forces the issue, and so a lot of times the folks will be, tell me, do you have kids, and how are they doing in school, and are you have plenty of food to eat? Are you okay there?
Yes.
Come to find out, when you ask them, when's the last time you went to town to buy groceries?
Right.
They can't remember.
Oh dear.
And so, but they wouldn't call up because they were low on food. They got a letter from the bank. And so then there's all of these other related items, bookkeeping, legal, mental health counseling,
taxes,
all of these things that then are slowly drawn out and trying to help them. No, they have a friendly voice, but they all at the other end of the line.
Right.
And that there's services available.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to you on that. That's an amazing thing. I tell you, if they didn't have that service, I don't know what some of these people would do. You know, whether it's practical or emotional. You know, you get to a certain point, I think, and probably there's a desperation that sets in.
Yes, there is, and you know, we're fighting increased suicide rates in rural America.
Yeah.
The opioid crisis, which is really is one of the things that Nebraska Farmers Union and Nebraska Farm Bureau, as well as our national organizations, partner on to try to help folks who are fighting those challenges. And sometimes those addictions and challenges also have ties back to the struggles at the farm and things not going well.
Sure, depression, anxiety, you know.
Sure, and of course when you don't have enough money, then of course there's arguments between spouses about do we keep going, do we stop, you know, how do we make things work?
How is the future going to be different than how it is right now?
Yep.
Boy, I tell you what, that is a rough thing. Now, if you had to, I'm sure somebody asked you this in the heart of your heart of hearts, how do you see the future unfolding? Are there a couple different scenarios? Is this tariffs thing with China a major demarcation point, or what's the future hold in your opinion, or is it just keep on hanging on until something pops for us?
Well, we are the world's largest food producing nation. And yet our national farm and our national food policy is really dysfunctional. We do not have an end goal. We have no real focus on appropriate value. All of the farmers and ranchers in America are doing a wonderful job of being good environmental stewards, of producing things in a high quality products.
Efficient ways.
In a very efficient way. They're running good businesses. They're very innovative. They're doing all the right things.
Yeah.
The one thing they haven't, that really is the root cause of all of this, is a lack of appropriate value. And so when we get more value and more focus on value in both farm policy, trade policy,
Yeah.
that will be a huge step forward.
Is there any way, I have to ask this, it's probably a little bit naive, is there any way to get more into the value add, part of this deal? Can we add value to the commodity products and make them unique and special, or is that kind of a pipe dream, or that's a small part of the bigger picture?
Well, taking the products that you produce and the natural resources that you control and looking at them and saying, how can we maximize the economic return on all of these? And so our organization has built more cooperatives than any other organization in the state by a wide margin.
Is that right?
And so that is a part of working together for the good of the whole of the community. So looking at keeping your own money in your own community and putting it to work so that you so in a lot of rural communities, the co-op is still one of the most important businesses.
It's a bastion of activity right there, huh?
What's in
the co-op.
town.
That's right. That's right. I spent a lot of time at the local co-op.
So we look at ethanol, which has been a huge success story because it takes our existing commodity, it does value added, it still turns a good food and feed product into a different kind of feed product.
Yeah.
So we're still getting value out of the distiller's grains and the wet mash, and so we're still, it gives Nebraska, we're the #1 red meat producing and cattle feeding state in the nation, competitive advantage. And it's more value in rural communities. We've put in over $5 billion worth of capital investment. That's new tax base. These are new good paying jobs in rural communities.
Wow.
It's the most successful rural economic development strategy that our state has ever pursued, and it's all around a simple idea of getting more out of what we already produce.
Yeah.
And so that and wind energy. Wind, the wind, it blows.
And solar, both
yes,
of them?
and solar.
Sure.
And so wind right now, we've got about $2.5 billion of investment in rural communities. And so these are struggling rural communities that are really hanging on by the margins. So these kinds of investments are real property tax relief, which is at the state level. The biggest single issue that we face is property tax relief, and how do we come up
Are you influencing that dialogue?
We are a part of a coalition, Nebraskans United Coalition, made up of almost all of the major education organizations in the state and the ag organizations working together to come up with a more fair way to pay for K-12 education and provide property tax relief. And this is a tough nut to crack, but it's one that our state has to deal with.
Well, you're right at the very front of the summit. You're climbing up the mountain and you're pulling a lot of people with you. And it's not just one issue. You're talking about some of these other issues, education and so on. These are huge. So I want to thank you for your personal contribution, as well as congratulate you on doing an incredible job for this state. Thank you so much for coming over here to WOWBIZ Nebraska. Thank you, John.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. My pleasure. We'll be right back with WOWBIZ Nebraska. Thanks so much. Welcome back to WOWBIZ Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinderocker. I've got a great story for you, and I thank you for tuning in. This story is going to take the entirety of the back half of this thing, but I want to talk about something that is so important to everybody, and that is those key moments in your life when you know what you're supposed to do with the rest of your life. All right? Those moments don't come along to everybody. Sometimes they're crystal clear. They're what I call your primal moment. But not a lot of people can say, you know, I just remember that one time and that just cleared it all up for me. Well, I'm one of those lucky people that actually had that very thing happen to him, and it's really influenced my life, and I'm going to share that with you. I'm going to encourage you to reflect back on moments, maybe in your early years, where somebody told you something or said something to you where you said, maybe I should go down that road. Maybe I should do that. But let me back up here and I'll tell you where I'm coming from and why I feel so strongly about it, and why, by the way, I'm here today. Here I'm today, right now with you in front of this camera, sharing this very personal story, but I think it has great broad application. Anyway, as some of my close friends know, I grew up on the farm over in central Iowa, and I was a member of the 4-H organization back then. In those days, you were either a Boy Scout if you lived in town, or you were a 4-H'er if you lived in the country, and I did live in the country. So obviously, I was involved with cattle and sheep and pigs, and that was my life, as well as, of course, what was going on in school. Well, anyway, as a result of my involvement, about the age 16, that's a pivotal age, by the way, I was nominated or voted to go to a leadership camp, along with, I think it was about 200 other kids from around the state of Iowa, happened to be at that particular time. And I was happy to go. Sounded like a good time to me. I hadn't really been out into a real forest with cabins and stuff like that during most of my life. I hadn't done that before, so I was excited about it. And I got there, and of course they had them all, the kids together, and everybody's got their suitcases, and they're all kind of lined up, and we get all distributed, and the leader of the entire thing said, look, he said, we're going to divide you all up into groups, small groups, 8, 10 people at the most, and we've got all these cabins out here, and so everybody's going to take a number, and you're going to join the group, and you're going to go off to these cabins, right, with your group. And everybody will have an adult supervisor, and we'll just see what happens at that point. Now, that was pretty exciting, right? We just kind of shuffled off to our little cabins. And I'll never forget walking into this cabin. I mean, it was just, you could see the sunbeams coming in the windows. You could see the little grains of dust, kind of floating. And you could, and the drab olive blankets that were on the super tight little beds, the bunk beds and stuff like that were in this cabin. I'll never forget it. I'd never seen anything quite like that before. It was like right out of a movie. Really a well art-directed movie about a campground. This happened to be one of those years, it happens every 17 years as I understand, where the cicadas were cheeping and in the trees around all the cabins. So that added an ambient element there that were kind of interesting background sound as this whole thing unfolded. Anyway, a very nice man I came to know later on very well, and he was a wonderful guy, and he was the facilitator. Kind of the facilitator for this particular leadership training thing that they were kind of doing here. And he said, everybody gets settled. He said, here's what's going to go on. We're not going to tell you what to do. Whatever happens, happens. Right? He said, whatever comes into your head, just go ahead and say it. Just let it out, whatever happens. So we're all sitting there, and we're all teenagers, everybody's self-conscious, and we're hemming and hawing and so on and so forth. But it took me about maybe 9 seconds, and I started talking, right? And it was a pivotal moment in my life. Something welled up inside of me at that particular moment. It was part of my teenage years, I'm sure, but I started talking rapidly and passionately about how I thought life was different, and we were all hypocrites, and we weren't very smart. We needed to change the way we thought, and the world was, crazy, and we needed to rethink who we were. And I was I said, we're sheep. We're just sheep. We're conditioned to do things. We don't know what we're doing. We're just doing them because our parents are telling them to do us. We're going here. We're going there. But we don't know what we do. Really. And it started to get really, it didn't subside, let me put it that way. And it went on, and I started to get talked about religion and spirituality and the existence of our purpose on the earth. And I went on, no kidding, I went on for 90 minutes. 90 minutes. Do you know what that's like for a 16-year-old guy? Nobody knows anybody, right? And I'm speaking to these kids in this cabin with great conviction, great passion for 90 minutes. It was like there was something inside of me that had to come out. It was really, I can't describe it enough to you. It was therapeutic. It was probably like primal therapy, basically. Well, anyway, after 90 minutes, the adult kind of cleared his throat. I mean, people were crying. It was a very emotional room, very emotional. Nobody was bored. Well, anyway, so he said, okay. He said, it's time for us to get back to the main area there with the kitchen and the cafeteria, and let's head back. So I'm walking out, and we're all kind of shuffling out, and I'm thinking to myself, what did I do? What did I do? And there was this gal that was part of the group, and she said, can I talk to you, please? Can I speak with you? And I said, sure. And so we kind of stepped, she said, come over here, and then stepped away from the group. Everyone was kind of just drifting over to the main area. And she said, can I talk with you? Can we take a little walk here? I said, sure. So we walked over to an area that was a very wooded area, and there was a little path, hadn't been used much, and kind of took us back to a campfire area. And I don't think too many people have been in the campfire area for a while, but it was an old kind of dusty campfire area, and the logs and the wood and the rocks and so on. And this is the kind of place where we would all go when we were in teenage years and sing Kumbaya. It was that kind of place. And she stood there with me, and she said, look, I think you said everything that I want to say, but I couldn't say. You took every word from my soul. This is her words, and said it all. And she said, I feel like maybe you and I are somehow linked at some higher level. You're like the other part of me. You took all the words out of my soul, and you said them. And it's unbelievable. She said, I think I love you. I think I'm supposed to be like, yeah. Oh, yeah, serious. She was very serious. And of course, I didn't know what to say. I was dumbstruck by her reaction. So I said, she gave me a little hug, right? And then we went back, and that was it. Now, I never saw her again. Well, went home. My mother came to pick me up in our old Pontiac, and I sat with her. And normally I would talk, about camp and what I learned and all that. But I was very quiet, very quiet. And I'm reflecting, right? And I have this feeling of freedom. I have this real clear feeling inside. I haven't had that feeling for a long time, by the way. But I had that feeling, and I said to myself, I know what I'm here to do. I know now what I'm supposed to be doing. I didn't know until then. I thought I was going to be an athlete or, I don't know, whatever. I said, I'm the guy that's supposed to be saying things that other people are thinking, but they don't say, but I say. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. I want that to happen every day of my life. That was incredible. Made me feel great, made other people feel great. I'm going to do that. I didn't tell my mother that. I didn't say anything like that. It was very internal that I was processing this. Now I'm going to tell you something. That's the end of that story. I call it that's my camp destiny story. I knew then what my destiny was. Here I am today, right? But here's the deal. 2 years later, I was 18. I was elected to the presidency of the 4-H organization in Iowa. And then they sent me to Washington, D.C., and I'll never forget. I got out of the plane on the tarmac, and an adult came up to me and said, hey, Lynn, he said, you're supposed to give a speech to the Secretary of Agriculture tomorrow. Have a good day. There's 250 kids there from around the country. There I am in Washington, D.C., and I'm going to give a speech to Clifford Harden from Nebraska. From Nebraska, that's right. So the next day I stood up in front of Clifford Harden, and I said, Secretary, the world is pretty chaotic. People are violent on the streets, and there's people who don't have money, and they don't have food, and there's racial discord and polarization. A lot of unhappy people in the city. That's what I see on TV. In the farm, everybody's serene. They have money, they have food. Of course, this was back then, right? That was a different day. Maybe the agricultural sector of our economy should get involved in the urban sector. Maybe there's something we can do for those people. Maybe we should give them some support or food or something. That was the end of that. Went back. 2 weeks later, Secretary Harden called Iowa State University. Said, I want to do something along those lines. They sent me in with some farm kids We got into the basement of a Black Baptist church in the ghetto of Des Moines, Iowa. We started 3 4-H clubs in 90 days, excuse me, and that was the end of it. I walked away, went to college, never thought anything about it. I had 50 kids in 4-H in the basement of a Black Baptist church in a rough part of Des Moines, Iowa. 46 years later, I get a phone call from somebody I don't know. He says, "Hey, Lynn, I used to be a farm kid in Iowa way back when in the 70s. I know what you did in Iowa. I know what you did in Des Moines. I know because I'm involved with a state national organization. I took over the 4-H organization in Iowa after you." He said, "I'm here to tell you, today there are 4.5 million urban kids in 4-H. 4.5 million. That's as many as there are on the farm. It's 50-50. I said, "Well, how many kids do you think have been influenced by that whole project?" He said, "We counted that up. We guesstimate 38 million kids in 46 years. So I'm going to tell you something as I sign off here in WOWBIZ Nebraska, and I thank you so much for watching. My name's Lynn Hinderrocker. I'm a management consultant. I'm a speaker. And I'm going to tell you, you look for that key moment in your early life. And there's no knowing what will happen if you are doing your thing." Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it very much. Talk to you again. WOWBIZ Nebraska. Tune in next time. I'll see you again. Bye-bye. Thank you.